Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to continue with my review of Ken Burns' The American Revolution. We're going to be looking at episodes 3 and 4. So, let me bring these up. So, episode 3 is titled The Times That Try Men's Souls. So this is between July of 1776 and January of 1777. So this is still pretty early in the war. So in this one, you definitely see the Americans losing. So Washington has to abandon New York City and flees across to New Jersey. Then he attacks Trenton. This is, I believe, how he crosses when he crosses the Delaware. So, and they start dealing with the Haitians, which are German. And some of them, because the Americans treat them well, decide to desert and join the American cause. Some of them go home and then come back. But this is definitely one of the harder episodes just because the Americans are losing here. They're not doing well. Washington has to figure out how to keep his Matilda because they sign on for a matter of months and then they're going to go home. And as opposed to the British, which has a standing army. So it's very, very different. So I believe, yes, it's now a war of independence. They pretty much, this is no longer a game. We're trying to fight for our rights. We want to be separate. But they have the Battle of Long Island, which is defeated. The Americans escape, but it's definitely this is again very early in the war. You definitely see a lot of Washington's problems where again he's trying to keep people, he's losing people. Things are not going well. So these are not short. It is very, very interesting. I believe I put these out. The actors voicing them. We still have, our narrator is Peter Coyote. Josh Boulogne is still the voice of George Washington. We've now added Jeff Bridges is the voice of Thomas Jefferson. Claire Danes does Abigail Adams. And of course, the other name that I recognize on here is Paul Giamatti, who's voicing John Adams. Because who else would he voice? So it's again, this is kind of the mid-range. The U.S. isn't doing very well. They got our first major loss in the war, which was the loss of New York. Washington never gets New York back. Well, we get New York back, but he never wins New York back from the British. We'll get to that. That's in the episode 6, but he never gets New York back. So then we move on to the 4th episode, which is Conquer by Dawn. This is January 1777 through February 1778. Philadelphia falls here. They have a win at the Battle of Saratoga. French now enters the war, which again, I believe it's where he crosses the Delaware, which was cold and wet and horrific. And they're not fighting really the British, they're fighting the Haitians, but that convinces they get a victory and that convinces the French to join the war, which is not a good thing. And no, they're not actually, this is the French monarchy. It, in many ways, once the French enter and then later the Spanish, the American Revolution in part becomes just another extension of the French and Indian War that started this. British win one war, then in order to pay for it, they tax the colonists, then the colonists rebel and eventually convince the French and the Spanish to join, and the French and the Spanish who lost decide to start attacking other things like Gibraltar and Jamaica. And the Caribbean is where these are the money makers of their colonies is in the Caribbean, not North America. So you definitely this is when things kind of start politically turning against the British because Parliament's more concerned about their moneymakers down in places like Jamaica and the Bahamas, as well as some of their areas in the Philippines, because those make more money than the British colonies. So, but Benedict Arnold is the one. He wins the Battle of Saratoga. This is before he turncoats. Congress, of course, has to flee Philadelphia because it's taken over, which turns out to be completely pointless. They do not win this back in a battle. The British just leave because they go back to New York because Philadelphia seems useless. I can't remember. I think it was Cornwallis who capsules Philadelphia with the idea that if he captures their capital city, it will end the war, which the U.S. doesn't really have a capital city, so no, it doesn't do that. But you also get a lot of how the back and forth is. And again, you get, I believe, yes, they beat, you have the battles of the Brandywine and Germantown, which General Howe wins. They flee Philadelphia. They have a victory over General Burgoyne in Saratoga, which looks really bad for the British. Again, this was Benedict Arnold who does this. So, and then of course the French come a knocking, and that's gonna cause problems because then eventually the Spanish come a knocking. But this is about midway through the war. You definitely see how this becomes bigger than just the American Revolution once the French join. Because remember, the French and the English hate each other. They've hated each other for a very, very long time. They don't hate each other now, not as much, at least as far as I know. But again, this is still, you see a lot of the people deserting. You see slaves getting to make a choice. Now, let's be aware, the British were not anti-slavery. They made proclamations saying, if you're a patriot slave, come to us, we'll set you free. They had no intention of setting any of their own free. And not to mention, when it comes to treatment of African slaves, the U.S. it doesn't hold a candle to the brutality that you get in the Caribbean. You really don't. It is far, far worse down there. There's a lot of death going on down there. It's not to make light of what slavery in the continental United States, which was horrible, but the Caribbean was so much worse. At least there was they wanted to keep them alive in the continental United States, mostly. In the Caribbean, they just killed them a lot. And by them, I mean African slaves and their descendants. So it was very much of a mess. But nonetheless, so again, these two episodes are in the middle of the war. You see a lot of back and forth. You see a lot of starvation. The U.S. is not doing well. We do, in fact, need the French. So you do see the introduction of Lafayette, who it becomes a very, very famous general. He is very French. He's also, I think, only like 21 when he starts. I've always imagined in my history classes, I remember thinking Lafayette was like equal to age to George Washington. No. He was very, very young, and he was trying to earn his chops. So it is very interesting. And he does become one of Washington's most trusted generals, and somebody he takes a lot of advice from. But this is where we do realize we do in fact need the French, and where, again, children are irritating. Sorry about that. I swear a lot of these videos lately have had cuts in them. That's what I get for filming in the afternoon. But lately I'm too tired to do it at night. So again, to finish off the last few minutes of this video, this is the middle of the war. So you see the British doing very, very well. The Americans are getting a little bit. You do see them start to deploy their guerrilla tactics, which means they start harassing in little bands. The British, when it comes to Philadelphia, they prevent them from ever getting out. So they harass them so they can't get out to get provision. So there's a lot of, we're going to starve each other issues going on here. But again, these two episodes are smack dab in the middle of the war. So they're still dealing with the Americans are still trying to get themselves together. And this doesn't change much. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So, but this is when the French enter. So that is it for this review. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. My next video will be finishing up episodes 5 and 6. I do highly recommend this entire series. For homeschoolers, if you are doing the American Revolution, this should be required, because this really does show what the heck is going on. And it shows things that typically we do not learn in school, because it does show the American leadership and the forefathers for what they are, humans. And in many cases, wealthy, egotistical, stubborn white men, because they're bickering like crazy. I don't think even the Articles of Confederation have been written yet, because they keep arguing. And then, of course, they're pissed off at Washington because he keeps retreating. And I think in this episode, they finally give Washington full control so that he doesn't have to keep asking them. And, of course, they refuse to pay. So that's the other reason Washington's losing people. A lot of people do not get paid in this. So, again, if you liked what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. Again, the American Revolution, as well as Felicity Merriman, who's our American Girl doll, representing this period of history, will be going on in February. We will move on to the continuation of the American Revolution, in a sense, with the War of 1812 next month, and Caroline Abbott. So, again, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you.